Hey, so I wanted to come back and finish verbally what I started and provide some closure to the YouTube version of this project. um, I do a lot of projects. I've done a lot of projects in my life, and I've vlogged very few of them, or video documented very few of them. So it's not a natural instinct to whip out the camera and narrate and stuff. So I didn't whip out the camera and narrate the last steps of this project, but it came out pretty good, and I'm going to share it and discuss a little bit of it with y'all now. So what did I do? Well, where we left off, I had holes here and here where I had injected the wax. It actually did a great job. No rattle at all whatsoever anymore. But what I didn't document is how I repaired these holes. So I'll do that now. So the first thing I did was I bought a bag of rosewood sawdust. So this is a pretty fine, let's see, I don't know if that can pick up. I can't monitor this camera. It's pretty fine dust. I bought this from Banjo Brothers. And then I did some experiments with different binders, adhesives, to sort of settle on how I was going to make the putty, essentially, or the filler that fills the bulk of the hole. I experimented with Titebond wood glue, a couple different dilutions, epoxy resin, and cyanoacrylate CA glue, super glue. And I experimented by forming little pockets with the end of a pencil in aluminum foil to make a hole that roughly resembles the size and shape of the holes I'm filling. So I had little simulated, you know what, better yet, I'll just show you. So take a piece of foil and shape it at the end of a pin. So this creates a simulated fretboard. And so I practice on these with the different binders, the different glues, and the powder, the sawdust, mixing it up and filling. And then checking out the properties of the result in terms of hardness, density, weight, modulus of elasticity, how easily is it dented, how easily is it broken apart, stuff like that. And the epoxy and Titebond gave like really plasticky, very dense plasticky results, which I didn't like. And so I opted for the CA glue. And the risk, I guess, is that the CA glue is a little bit harder and not quite as flexible. And so maybe with seasonal changes and stuff, it might pop loose in there. But the process was basically, taking the hole, sprinkling a little layer of dust, and then adding a drop or two of CA glue, and then packing it with the back of a drill bit. And I have a 6mm drill bit which fit perfectly, and so it would be a little bit of dust, a little bit of CA, and then pack. A little bit of dust, a little bit of CA glue, pack. And filled the hole almost all the way to the top. If you remember, I left that ledge down inside the hole. That sort of indicates the backside of the previous inlay. So I got it to about that height, and then I started test fitting the dots. So here's a dot. This is from StuMac. This is Perloid, or actually no, it's Abalone. It's the real deal, which matches the others. 6 millimeters, it turns out, was the right size. I got a couple. I got the 6 and the 6.35 millimeter, just because I had a hard time measuring, even with the calipers, because it's just visual, you know, where the things line up and stuff. Anyway, so I started test fitting this to gauge the depth, and I continued to fill and pack and fill and pack until the top surface of the replacement dot was just proud. That means, you know, just higher than the surrounding rosewood. And so that's when I called it quits. Let that dry for a while and harden, and then CA glued the dot in the hole, and it stayed proud. And then after that dried, it was just a matter of scraping down the inlay to bring it down to exactly flush. And you know, the fretboard has a radius to it, a curvature. So just scraping everything in, leveling the top of the inlay with the rosewood. And to do the scraping, I used the back side of this utility knife. So this side, and if you feel, from the factory, there's a slight burr on this edge, and there's not on this edge. So you want to use that burr to do your scraping. So you can bend it slightly, and that allows you to scrape just in one place as opposed to scraping the entire edge all at once. So you kind of bend it and tilt it back, and then it'll touch only in the middle here, and you can focus your scraping. So scrape, 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 and then sand with like 380 grit paper. And the sanding produces a dust, rosewood dust, which is even finer than the dust that I got from Banjo Brothers. And so that dust can be used to fill in the periphery of the dot. So anywhere the hole is slightly large, that dust goes in there, and then a little drop of CA glue. The best way to do very careful deposition of CA glue is to use an X-Acto knife, actually. Here's the X-Acto knife that I used, and you can see there's actually still some crap on the end of it. So you put yourself a little droplet of CA glue on the tip of this, and then you can have very precise placement of the glue. So scrape, 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 sand, 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 and then you kind of fill where necessary with the sanding dust, a couple drops of CA glue, rinse and repeat. And then let me show you the outcome. So hopefully you can see this. You know, from any distance you can really hardly tell at all. I mean, it looks really good. And then feeling wise, you can't feel anything at all. There's no edges in there. There's nothing that can be felt. I mean, it's perfectly smooth. So the scraping and the sanding is what brings that in. More totally smooth, flush surface. And then let's take a look with the microscope. Get a close-up view. Let's start with this one. So this is, what fret is this? 9. So yeah, there's a little, you can see, there we go. That probably could use a little dust and fill. The CA glue kind of shrinks a little bit. So I can do that easily. Dust and fill with CA. So 380 grit produces the dust, fill that crack, and then a droplet of CA takes care of it. Let's see here, we got this exposure issue. So the rest of it looks pretty good, you know. Yeah, I mean, you can't feel like this, even though we can see this here, it can't be felt with the finger. So that just gives you an idea of how big it is. All right, let's look at third fret. Exposure. Yeah, so same thing around the periphery here. That's just where we had the soldering iron, heating everything up, charring the wood a little bit. There we go. You can see, yeah. So might want to do a little bit more dust, a little more 380 grit, maybe even go finer, and try to fill those teeny tiny cracks. But you know, again, it's not something that can be felt. Let's see. Ooh, that's so hard to do. Yeah. So anyway, you know, looking at this distance, I don't think you'll be able to see anything at all. And it plays well, and it doesn't rattle anymore. Oh, and the neck adjusts just fine. So these are 12s, very heavy, relatively heavy strings, and you know, it's got just ever the slightest relief in it. So it adjusts just fine. Yeah. Well, thanks for following along.